Let's give a welcome round of applause to Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. So even in behavioral science, it's not all cliches. You know, you hear a cliche that says opposites attract, and then you hear a cliche that says birds of a feather. Well, you know what, they're both right, but in different circumstances, one's operative, one isn't. We kind of know roughly when that is. I would bring that into this human behavior and organizations easy class I was taking, and I realized I'm being treated like I'm a Nobel laureate for taking so wow, this field could, so I got into it, and I loved getting into this field, and I realized that not only you could have a nice quality of life doing this, so, and I wound up switching at my senior year, which I thought would be much to my parents' horror, from medicine to this field of organizational behavior. If you really want to know something which is even worse than tedious academic lectures, it was when those of you all as business leaders come to campus and want to sound even more cerebral than the academics and don't give us the brilliance of your actual experience, which is really the decisions of what you do in the world of action, are so much more interesting than trying to use neologisms. Neologism, as you probably know, is a made-up word for made-up words. is instead of using that kind of language, is to talk from your experience. So I thought, they're not talking about experience. There's bad stuff and good stuff. Exactly. We're grouping it all together. I need to go out there and learn about this. So I went out, and I talked to people who went to prison for price fixing. And the economists would say, well, the likelihood of antitrust problems in this highly competitive industry are very low. True, the likelihood of success is low because somebody's going to break the cartel. But the temptation to try it was very high, and that's why they get in trouble for that. And they could justify it. So I'd meet these people, and I'd see their pictures active in the church, and the Boy Scouts, Little Leagues, and their kids on the pictures on their desk. And there were these Babbitt-type figures in their communities who, in their minds, thought that they were not convicted, they shouldn't have been convicted felons, and you could understand their point of view. So I can't understand it, and I'm not justifying what they did. They say, isn't this the American way? You say, well, no, it's not. Free market competition, but you see, what's their justification? Because the prisons are filled with innocent people. Why do they think they were innocent? Is on The Apprentice, not to disparage the Donald. He's very impressive in many ways, but still the premise of that show is, of course, an elimination game. It is like a musical chairs or a Gong Show thing. The person who won wasn't somebody who beat some very difficult overseas competitor arising over the horizon, or some supplier who's now vertically integrated into your market or something. No, it was, how have you trashed your co-worker? That the person who wins is the person who destroys their team. That's the model of a great leadership, of ethical, and through deception, thievery, a lot of misogyny and things. So this is bizarre, but it's only after the crushing setback that the person is going to make it. That's the punctuating moment. That's where you prove it. And most of us don't make it through. Those of us who have had those setbacks, and you make it through, you're tempered by it, you're challenged, your character is proven, and that's the resilience, and that's a very, I think, divine spiritual point. That's how we get through these tough times, and that's what the world wants to see in leaders. But I think it's important to bring out a spiritual backbone, a spiritual overview as we're going on these things. If you really want to push further, is that I think we've all had some unhappiness in our childhood. In my case, it was just the perpetual illness of both of my parents. Is they never were raging into the darkness. They were big believers, and my father would often quote from the book of Job, which is, to some have trouble with the book of Job, because of course the bottom line of the core part of Job, as opposed to the interpolations on either end, is, we don't always understand the suffering, and Job's friends were always there to say, this is retribution, this is punishment for the way you've lived. And he was supposed to be this virtuous, honest man, and the horrible things that happened to him. Why was it he was screaming, how could you do this to me? And then, as if there's a simple Deuteronomic equation that you would do this and I give you that. Well, and God, as you recall, comes out at the end and said, basically, where's that contract? Where are you? You of dust and ashes, when I created the universe and the place. Who are you to tell me what the rules are and things? And that's a certain existential leap of faith there that, whether or not it's Martin Buber or Graham Greene or whomever you would look at, that you have to figure out how do you put the meaning into something you don't completely understand. And the religion really helps bring that. And with the suffering we had in my childhood and things, my father said, don't rage at the night, in the darkness. At Job, and ironically at my bar mitzvah, or maybe it wasn't ironic, maybe it was providential,
was that what
is
you
that
read?
my Haftorah portion was Job.
Wow.
And
wow.
I was So I love that, and that turns out when we've had as many of you in this room, and to some I'm familiar with some of them in the room, and setbacks along the way, it turns out that the book of Job, or if you ever read Rabbi Kushner's When Bad Things Happen to Good People, is a lot of that is heavily anchored in the book of Job, is that the will to go on tomorrow. If somebody who's struggling with their faith and trying to understand divinity, if they trying to believe in something they don't see, what do you see is tomorrow, is the belief in a tomorrow.